Breaking Bad, Season 5, Episode 6, titled Buyout. It's bittersweet now. I'm 6 episodes into the last season. It's 16 in total, which means I have 10 more to go, and I'm going to continue to crank out these reaction videos. The reason I say it's bittersweet is because this episode was so good. Okay, but like I said, the show's almost over with. Literally. I guess I can just do my best to give a reaction. So, so they start on a really. I feel like there's individuals out there who may say the beginning of this episode or the first part of this episode is overdone, and then there's possibly people like myself who say, well, you know, I'm a little bit of both. I take that back. I'm a little bit of both. So I feel like the length of this scene is overdone, but it had to be done because there was a child murdered in the process of them getting all this key ingredient, and they're dealing with this dude who's definitely not. He has a specific gene inside him. I feel like he just doesn't care. Like, was it psychopath or one? Is psychopath or a psychotic? It's one of those. Like, he lacks empathy because he's just like, hey, I just got to do it. He thought so quick too. But anyway, they go through the process. At this particular part of the episode, they're going through the process of dismantling the bike and putting it in barrels because, you know, from previous episodes, they're going to dissolve it in acid. Now, you know, if they're going to do that to the bikes, they're going to have to do that to the kid. And they don't show that process, which I think it falls. How can I explain this? There's so many TV shows and movies that it goes hand in hand with sex and murder of this caliber. As something like that's going to happen, you as a director or actor or a writer have to be able to convey the obvious without actually showing it. That's the mastery. That's where the mastery comes into play. That's what makes it so good, because you know what's going to happen, but it's just not in your face. It's done so subtle that it helps the viewer, me personally, to get more emotionally involved in what's going on. That's just the way I think about it. So the only thing they do as far as showing the kid being dissolved, they show a hand in the dirt because they brought back all the bike and all the equipment in a dump truck, and the kid's buried in the dirt. All you see is his hand. That's it. That's just mastery, right? That's the mastery of art. It's so beautifully done. And of course, you add on the somber music, but I felt like it ran a little too long. It could have been a little bit shorter, but I think it served its purpose. But after that, it gets right down to the nitty gritty. So, in this episode, you got Pinkman, you got Mr. White, you got Mike. Those three primarily, they're going through it to try to figure out their next move. Now, after this has happened, it's really shaking them. I can tell it's really shaking each and every one of them. Especially Pinkman, he's really not into this. Mr. White, for some reason, it comes up later on in the episode, but for some reason he's being really pig-headed or mule-headed or whatever, stubborn about this issue. I mean, Mike has figured out a way to liquidate the ingredient and get a reasonable amount of money. Him and Pinkman are like, okay. Pinkman buys into what Mike's saying. Now they're voting on everything, and Pinkman and Mike are pretty much voted on this, and he said, you can keep your part. But of course, the person they're selling it to is like, nah, no deal. I want it all or nothing. Okay, Mr. White is still hanging on to it, fighting tooth and nail for this stuff. Now I feel like this is one thing. I'll go on. I feel like they don't see the audience as being, I wouldn't say unbright or anything like that. That's a word. I don't feel like they think the audience isn't capable of making, putting the dots together and making the correct assumptions along with the story, but I feel like they wanted to spell it out. So yes, Mr. White is hanging on to this particular, he calls it an empire. He's hanging on to this particular source of income because he got screwed out of a deal years ago, and you get exposed to that like in the second or third season, if I'm not mistaken, about his past with this $1 billion company now. And I'm like, I'm not saying I'm a genius, but I'm not trying to toot my own horn either. I'm just saying it came to me just before they spelled it out. I'm like, okay. But then they also put something else on top of it. As him and Pinkman are having a conversation in his house, because his wife is still, I guess, in the midst of this family blockade, if you will. He's having a conversation with Pinkman, and he decides to have Pinkman stay for dinner. I mean, which is actually pretty good, because I think at this point, Mr. White and Mrs. White are probably close to throwing blows at one another. They're close to having a physical altercation at this point. I mean, they've both run out of options. And what I wanted to say is, even though they're trying to go at each other's throats at this particular moment, they're so similar you can't even deny how similar they are. They really are meant for each other, because Mr. White is in a tooth and nail fight. He really has no options. He's hanging on by that much to this chemical, and for him to have his ability to continue to cook. And I think the cook is more therapeutic than it is about the money for him. I think the character says something like, I'm not in the meth business or the money business, I'm in the empire business. Something silly like that. But I guess that's just his rationale. But I feel like he's basically hanging on, just like his wife is hanging on. His wife is hanging on to what she believes by keeping the kids away and not really speaking to them and things of that nature. Mr. White is hanging on to this meth distribution by trying to withhold his share of this chemical in order to but it shows, because Pinkman is really shooken up by this last murder. I mean, of course, I think anybody would. I mean, it's a child involved, teenager. I think anybody would be shooken up by that. So he wants an out. He wants an out from it, and he sees that. He's trying to take that, but they take the time. The writers and the director, they take the time to illustrate how much of a relief or how keeping himself busy can uplift Mr. White's spirit. He's whistling while he's working, because Pinkman and Mr. White have already agreed at this point that Pinkman should go home early. Now Mr. White goes back to work and he's whistling happily. I felt like that's done to illustrate what I just explained. Like, it's helping him cope with his current situation. You know what I mean? And he goes into detail and tells Pinkman a key point from the argument that he had with his wife in a few episodes back. But of course, Mr. White, and they also threw in some way to continue to show that Mr. White is quite the intelligent person. I'm sorry, I don't know why I said bee. Quite the intelligent human being. He is he gets zip tied to a radiator. He tries to get a coffee mug to break it, get the glass, cut the zip tie. Okay. In the process of doing that, goes across the room, but he's like, I still have the wire, and it's still plugged in. So he has some strong teeth, mind you. I mean, I don't think I could do that stuff. I don't think I could chew through an electrical cord. That stuff is tough. He chews through it, gets it just perfect, and basically creates a arc welder, if you will. Which I don't think it does that though. But in the process, he like really charged his skin. He gave himself a gnarly tattoo at the least. A really gnarly tattoo at the least. I know I'm making jokes out of it, but I don't know. I just thought that was insane, them doing that. But he had to get free. Now, what else happened in this episode before I forget? What else happened in this episode? Is there anything else I should bring up that I forgot about? I'm trying to figure it out for myself. No, I hate to say it, but if I remember it, I'll put it in the next upload. Till then.